So on today's episode of the RecWired podcast, I have Sam Holt from Capex Currency, one of our newer partners. We talk through Sam's experience in recruitment, how recruitment companies can benefit from FX, not only from better rates, but also the ability to do business in countries, US, Europe, etc. And lastly, we go on to cryptocurrency, our thoughts and views on that. I hope you enjoy the episode. And if you're a RecWired member, there could be a big saving for you. Welcome to the RecWired podcast. Joined by one of our newer partners today, Sam Holt from Capex Currency. Morning, afternoon, Sam. How are you?
Hi, Andy. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad, thank you. So, Sam, you work for Capex Currency.
Yeah.
I guess you didn't always. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so when I left school, so to speak, I decided not to go to uni. I was working in a completely different industry in data infrastructure for about 5 years. I then decided that wasn't really where I wanted to go long term. So I went traveling for 2 years around Australia and Asia. When I eventually got back home to the UK, I found myself in recruitment. I worked in that space for about 18 months, most of that for Hayes, and also working after Hayes freelance for another company which my family member worked for. So I have experience in the recruitment field. I left recruitment to start my own business in something separate, which was almost like Deliveroo, but for local grocery shops on a website. It didn't quite work out for me, but while I was doing that, I met my current director, Dan Caps at Capex Currency, who suggested that, with my experience in recruitment and some sales, I should give it a go in FX. Joined nearly 3 years ago now, fell into it and absolutely love it. So
if you had to touch time again, successful in recruitment, successful in online delivery, or successful in FX, what would you go for?
I really enjoy what I'm doing at the moment in FX. I studied economics at school, and that was always sort of my favourite subject, sort of microeconomics in terms of businesses and macroeconomics in terms of economies as well. So it's something I've naturally always taken an interest in and read about. So I felt really fortunate to be given the chance by Dan to work for Capex, and I've really enjoyed working there ever since.
Tell us a bit about the company. How big are you guys?
Yeah, so we're currently a team of 6. There's my director, Dan, who started the company, I think 5 or 6 years ago now. His background was he worked for a big brokerage in London and wanted to start his own company essentially and do his own thing. Move away from London and traveling every day. So we're local, based in Leon-C. We're just a bit more flexible, a bit more sort of work from home, meeting clients. It's a bit less sort of 9 to 5 in the office in the city every day, and a bit more post-COVID approach really. But we've done it a little bit before COVID, just a bit more open to different ideas. There's a team of 6 of us now, like I say. I sit just below Dan and help look after another 4 or 5 sales guys as well that work for us.
So Dan didn't fancy that trip into, is it Liverpool Street or Fenchurch Street along that line?
Fenchurch Street from Leon-C, yeah. So I think we've all had a bit of experience doing that.
Into the city every day.
No, yeah. I think, like you say, even sort of a couple of years before COVID hit, I think people were starting to have that move away to sort of working from home for a couple of days a week, or moving out from the city and into more local offices. So yeah, we were just sort of following that trend, and it's worked out really well for us.
I guess the world of FX has really changed. I mean, I remember, actually going into a bank, changing up money, or an international payment was almost unheard of. When on holiday, you take travelers checks, things like that just half the people listening or watching this will never have heard of. So I guess what's been the big changes in FX over the years?
Yeah, I think the big change over the last sort of 5 to 10 years has probably been people moving away from the banks. FX is actually the bank's second biggest earner. So when you consider sort of loans and everything else that they provide, FX is their second biggest earner, and they're the most expensive way to exchange your money, whether that be if you're a business or if you're going on holiday. Typically we work with SMEs and larger companies, but we also work with private clients that are buying and selling houses abroad. Our typical saving against the bank is generally between 2 to 3%. So once as a business you start billing in the US or Europe or wherever else worldwide, or even as private clients, if you're looking to buy a house for maybe 300,000 euros, it's a 10,000 euro saving there. So
So it's not just 2 to 3% better. The banks will do 2 to 3 points, and you'll do, significant.
Well, yeah, I mean, typically the banks will charge anywhere between sort of 2 to 5%.
Wow.
On the exchange rates, and that varies between bank to bank. We look to cut that for you, and the average saving is 2 to 3%. Yeah.
So in terms of, I guess the internet's really changed that and made this whole market competitive. I guess you're up against online players in this market.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest change has been, for brokers and banks is getting online platforms. Our platform, for example, you can just sort of exchange currency at a click of a button. You can see all your live rates. You can convert up to 38 different currencies on there. Yeah, the big change really has been tech. I think, a lot, maybe 10 years ago, you still had to go to a bank and chat to the bank manager to say what was coming in and going out. Whereas now you can sort of pick up the phone, drop someone an email, or just do it straight away on the platform. So I suppose, like most industries, tech's really leading the charge and the change in that respect.
I must admit, I've always used an online platform for the last X years to transfer money. And when you guys came along, I'm like, okay, if you're going to be partners, better test the service of my own money. And, I think I spent all right, okay, I sent a not huge amount through, and I'm just really impressed with how easy it was actually. And the rate was better than I was getting on my previous supplier. So it was all great. But I think there's always that nervousness around change. That's the big thing that I noticed. And I think, it's one of those things that companies or people are very set in their ways. I certainly was. I was with the same FX provider for maybe 15 years, and I was incredibly set in my ways. So to sort of switch my personal stuff to you guys, was quite a leap of faith, actually.
Yeah, I think that's completely understandable. I mean, even sort of, I suppose in any industry, it's quite hard to convince anybody to change. They're set in their ways. When you're working in recruitment, or when I was working in recruitment, you're speaking to managers and HR managers, etc., that are pretty set in their ways, and they might post a job ad on a certain job board, and that's worked before, and they will never look past that. But you really have to sort of try something or show your value to win those clients over. I think it's especially hard in banking because it's their money at the end of the day, and people are very hesitant to put money into a new bank account, or they're stuck in their ways with their old bank. So it might be that little bit harder, but all of our banking partners are FCA registered, and because essentially we can get the better rates for our clients than you would by directly going to your banks. So the savings guaranteed in that respect, because we look at what you're currently being charged. So that's your margin between what you're currently getting and the interbank rate. For RecWired members, we cut that margin by 50% for all members. And then in terms of security, that it's just as secure as your high street bank.
Fantastic. So selling into recruitment companies, having been a recruiter, how do you find it, Sam?
I think it helps just to have a little bit of an understanding of how the invoicing terms work in recruitment, and how the general sort of ways of business work in recruitment. I'd say recruitment's a little bit different from the typical businesses that people would expect for FX. So I suppose a lot of people would hear foreign exchange and think of importers and exporters of goods. However, I think especially since Brexit and COVID, that goods importing and exporting, the market has dropped quite a lot in the UK. It's now a lot of service-based companies that are doing foreign exchange, whether it's recruiters or software companies. It's a growing market. So I think it helps to have that experience, understand the invoicing terms, and essentially help protect businesses, not only by saving that money on the initial exchange rate, but by also protecting their bottom line. If, for instance, recruiters, some of them don't get paid for up to 3 months since they make the placement. So we can lock in the exchange rate when you make the placement, and then you can take that exchange rate 3 months down the line, or up to 2 years down the line, which just really helps protect your profit margins, because obviously in that time, if the exchange rates move 5 to 10%, that's coming off your profit at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you've paid your consultant and et cetera, so you want to lock that in.
Yeah, exactly. I think we don't just help with the sort of initial saving on the rate. It's helping sort of put a bit of a plan in place. A lot of recruiters might just say, oh, I've seen that rate on Google, so I use that, and then it's dropped 10% in the 3 months since I've been paid. So they've lost out on a lot of the profit there. So we can help lock in exchange rates. We can help watch the rates for you to lock in a slightly better rate than what it might be at the moment in the next few days or weeks or whatever it is that your time frame is.
Well, one of the interesting things, I mean, I remember when we used to go and set up countries all around the world, and the biggest thing was you open the company and then getting the bank account was the biggest hurdle. And take, for example, the States, you had to be there, you had to open the bank, have your company, all the directors, you have to go in, and it was, and we're not talking years and years ago, we're talking like maybe 12, 13 years ago. So what's changed? How can you help solve that?
So I mean, that's still the case for a lot of banks in the United States and a lot of companies. I think especially in the recruitment field. I saw some stats the other day that for global recruitment, I think the USA is about 31% of the market share, total of $177 billion now. So naturally, you're going to get a lot of UK companies looking overseas and saying, I want a piece of that pie. But a lot of people get put off because they think I have to go to America, open a bank account, open an office. The initial costs and the hassle of doing that are huge. Where we can help with that is that we can do all of your compliance for you, all of your back office. At the end of that, you'll have a US bank account held in the USA. So even if you don't have an office in the US, you can say to the clients over there, look, I've got a bank account, it's a US bank account based in the USA. We can offer you local settlement, which is huge, especially for big companies. Like a lot of recruiters that we work with are recruiting for big US companies, and they just won't pay into a sterling bank account. So to be able to say, look, I've got a US bank account based in New York, you can pay me in dollars into that, and then we do the rest for you. So we can get accounts open for clients same day most of the time. I think we did for yourself personally. Our form takes 2 or 3 minutes to complete, and the difference between that and flying to America and the costs it's non-comparable, really.
No, and actually what you're doing is you're solving a problem. So it means that if you are looking to build out your US business, you can actually make yourself easier to do business with US companies. They don't mind trading with UK companies, but as you say, they don't want to be messing around doing, having to fill in SWIFT transfers, stuff like that, those type of things. So they just want to pay a bank account. What has probably changed was they used to love to pay by check. So actually, even in the States now, they're finally getting away from that. I remember having to, basically go across and collect checks. That was well, I didn't, but I remember the discussion around we have to actually drive out to Jersey and collect a check. It was just crazy.
Yeah, it's still the case in America. I think what surprises a lot of UK companies is, I get a lot of people saying to me, the US seems a bit backwards compared to the UK and Europe, just in terms of that a lot of companies still want to pay checks. That's one way that you can really sort of get around that, is by saying you don't have to pay us a check because we've got a US bank account and we can offer local settlement now. So it's a really, really big benefit to companies that don't want to be based in the USA but want to still take advantage of the amount of business that's out there at the moment, especially in the recruitment sector.
Obviously, all the European countries as well, you can do. Are you seeing much of a trend for your customers? You start seeing the FX, improve. So, is business growing internationally for a lot of your customers?
Yeah, I think, initially sort of in the last 2 years, especially sort of 2020 and 2021, with obviously COVID and Brexit, a lot of the traditional importers and exporters were hit very hard. So we've seen a bit of a swing now to a lot more service companies looking abroad, working in Europe, Australia, America, and they're taking advantage of that. I think because of using a specialist brokerage like ourselves, we can offer you a multi-currency account that can send and receive up to 38 different currencies. We can get that open for you same day, and all the accounts are in your own business's name. So essentially, if you've got a good website, you've got a good company in the UK, and you're able to sort of market yourself in Europe or America, we can help you with the back office and the banking to, take the money and carry on working there.
Yeah, I think what's I appreciate, because you're FCA regulated, you can't talk about what you think where markets are going to go and what they're going to do. But with the dollar so strong at the moment, recruiting into the US must be so profitable. I mean, you probably can't tell me how low you think it's going to go, but I can't ever remember the dollar being this low.
No, yes, I mean,
against the pound, sorry.
Yeah, so last time that we were this low against the dollar was when COVID first struck. And if you zoom out on any chart, you'll just see it fall off a cliff, dip to this level, but then slowly, well, quite quickly actually get back up to where it was. However, at the moment, I think with the war in Ukraine, a lot of uncertainty in Europe and the UK over gas and energy prices. When there's a lot of uncertainty, investors and banks always look to the USA as a safe haven, and you see funds moving from the UK, Europe and elsewhere into dollars because it's seen as the safest place to put your money in investments. Off the back of that, you obviously see sterling losing a lot of value against the dollar. That doesn't always help companies that are buying products or services in dollars, because it's going to be a lot more expensive. However, 99% of the recruitment companies we work for, because they're charging in US dollars and then converting it back to sterling, they're seeing massive gains because the exchange rate is helping them out so much, where the dollar's improving against the pound.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting to see where that goes. But if you look at any given point, the dollar is so much stronger against a historical, and sort of certainly 10-year average, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's at the moment we're at a 2-year low. However, that was just temporary dip during COVID, and if you look back past that, it is sort of 20 or 30 years since it's been at this level. This is also the same for sterling against the euro. So yeah, I think everyone's just being very cautious at the moment.
A lot of recruiters I know, and or we've talked about being into crypto. I'd love to know your view on crypto.
Cryptocurrency is something that I think, although despite being there sort of for 10 years, I remember reading about Bitcoin probably 10 years ago, thinking, oh, it's a bit too risky for me, when Bitcoin was about $200, not putting anything into it, and now looking back and kicking myself. A lot of the technology there is very useful. I think where it lets itself down is just the volatility. So there's tech there that can be used for banking, which is great. However, are people going to put all their savings into something that can rise or drop by 50% in a month? And our business is going to start planning for that? I'm not so sure. However, we are seeing a lot of the sort of blockchain tech starting to be used by banks now, just because it's a lot quicker than traditional methods of sort of processing payments. So I think it'll be integrated in with traditional currencies. And I know there are a lot of industries or people that prefer to use Bitcoin and take the risks. But I think, for 90% of people, they're not going to want to sort of leave their savings and their funds in cryptocurrency, because I think it's dropped about 50% since in the last 12 months. So
I was chatting to someone in the investment community the other day, and they said to me that the trouble is people can't quite pigeonhole it. It's not quite a currency, it's not quite a commodity, it's somewhere in the middle. And it's depending on where you are, it's not a great commodity, it's not a great currency potentially. And it's almost like it needs its own lane and own sort of definition, I guess.
Yeah, I think the tech, so the blockchain tech, which is associated with cryptocurrency, I think where that's still relatively new, it's trying to find its market where it sits and sort of find a niche where it fits in well, and everyone says this is definitely better than what we use at the moment. I think that the opportunity is always going to be there for currency. However, a bit like we were saying earlier, a lot of people are sort of stuck in more sort of traditional methods. And I think just while it's so volatile, it doesn't make a lot of sense to start using it for all of your sort of monetary needs, just because you can sort of log on one morning and your Bitcoin's worth $60,000, and in a couple of months' time it's worth 30. So but yeah, the tech there is being adapted in the banking industry and lots of other industries as well. So
I can imagine. So knowing what you know now, with a bit of experience of doing a startup, with having worked for an FX company, if you went back to Hayes, or you probably wouldn't go back to Hayes, but if you went back into recruitment, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
In terms of working as a recruiter, or if I owned the company, working as a recruiter, the reason I actually left Hayes is I just felt a bit restricted by it. I think because it was a bigger company, we had to work in our local area. So I was working in an office which was just outside of London, so I couldn't quite tap into the London market. We had to sort of stay within our own area.
Your own postcode.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so all the offices were split up into sort of different areas, and you couldn't venture out of that. And if you did find a client outside of that, you had to pass it on. So I found that quite frustrating. I've always sort of had big dreams and wanted to do something a bit more outside of my hometown, I suppose. So yeah, I probably would have liked to have maybe gone to a different company where you could have worked globally, or could have tapped into some bigger cities in the UK where there was bigger opportunities and obviously bigger fees as well. And I think, yeah, we think we're seeing that movement, especially in the recruitment industry at the moment, of a lot of companies saying there's big markets abroad. UK recruiters are generally considered as the best in the world, as we are in a lot of service industries. So it makes sense to go out there and beat the local competition.
I completely agree. I mean, I think being in the UK, there's a lot more competition. It's a lot more, there's a lot more advanced. The buyers are a lot more sophisticated in terms of hirers, and the requirement of the service that high. I think if you can do recruitment in the UK, I'm not saying it's easy elsewhere, but it gives you an amazing grounding to go and be successful in other places. And I take your view about services. I think we've got one of the best service economies in the world. The challenge for us is going to be how, post-Brexit world, as you said, we convert those services into, revenues and things sometimes that have dropped off.
Yeah, I think also, and it's probably thanks to COVID, that a lot more businesses were open to having a Zoom call with someone on the other side of the world rather than jumping onto a plane. You can build up relationships a bit more than you can by just sort of sending someone an email or speaking to them on the phone. So I think that sort of technology and the movement towards using it more has meant that UK recruitment companies have been able to build much stronger relationships with people in America, Australia, places that you probably wouldn't have wanted to take the risk or the expense to go to and try and win business initially. But now you can essentially, sit in the same room, albeit on Zoom or Teams meetings, and really build these relationships and show the value that you can bring them.
Well, you need a laptop and a green curtain. So it's the new way of working. Sam, it's been great chatting, and we're really glad to have you on board with the network. I know that you guys are sponsoring our drinks for members on December the 1st, which is great. So be good if any of our members want to come along to our London drinks. You'll be there, and you can buy them a drink. As well, thanks for the savings you've made to me personally. Very delighted with that, and also as well, I know a number of our members have started to really benefit, which is great as well. So if people want to get hold of you, there'll be a link to our offer, and people can get hold of you, I guess, via LinkedIn,
email, phone call, all the sort of general methods really. We don't restrict ourselves to only one or two. I don't think any businesses do anymore. But yeah, LinkedIn's always a great place to start.
What I would say was that you as a salesperson, you're an old school salesperson. I remember because we originally made contact on LinkedIn, and you kept on following up by phone, and it kept on, and it's unusual. And I'm quite scattered sometimes, so I'm always, but you were so persistent around coming on board and working with the network that it really made the difference as well. And I think probably when we're saying, what advice could we give for recruiters, I think just be consistent and follow up, and just really push through. And that was what I really remember about starting to work with you guys. You just super keen, super consistent, followed up, did everything you said you'd do. And it's been a joy working with you since.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I mean, that's at the end of the day, like I said, I might be a bit more old school. I probably have a bit of Hayes to thank for that, actually, because I really do think the training that they gave me and all the other new starters was really good as a sort of first introduction into sales, and sort of speaking to people on the phone. But then, yeah, moving into FX, working for Capex, a lot of them skills are transferable. And I think once you stay consistent and you believe in the products you're offering and the saving you can show people, there's no reason not to follow it up and say, look, can you check your emails? Have you got 5 minutes next week for a quick call just to explain what we can actually offer? And I think most reasonable business owners or directors who want to be progressive and look at change and ways of saving money are always going to give you 5 minutes at a time if you are consistent.
Anyone who's ever done cold calling will give you time because they remember what it's like. So yeah, good.
Yeah.
Right, so Sam's guaranteeing to save our members 50% on their FX. If he doesn't, let me know. But it seems good so far. So thanks again, Sam. And if I don't see you before, I'll definitely see you for drinks in December.
Yeah, really looking forward to it and seeing more of your members at the Christmas party.
Cheers, Sam.
Thanks, Andy.